There are many very old aristocratic families in the world. The Lévis family of France is so ancient that they claim to be the oldest family in Christendom. To prove it, it is said that in their chateau, 2 paintings were hanging. One depicted Noah carrying the Lévis family papers onto the ark, and the other depicted the patriarch of the family with the Blessed Mother Mary, who called him my cousin and begged him not to bother removing his hat in her presence. They certainly were proud of their family history. Family history is an interesting thing. It's fascinating to trace a family tree. Of course, Mark Twain used to say, "Why waste your time looking up your family tree? Just go into politics and your opponents will do it for you." When I was a child, I used to love to sit for hours with my great-grandmother and hear stories of the past, of the family history as far back as she could remember. I used to make family trees with her help. But I was sometimes shocked and horrified to find that the lines and the branches on my family tree were not always quite as straight as I thought they should be. And those lines did not always lead to places and people where they ought to in a respectable family. Today we celebrate Holy Family Sunday. What is a family? And what makes it holy? Jesus loved family, but his understanding of family, as his understanding of practically everything else, was radically different and infinitely larger than everyone else's. He had no use for the tyranny of blood, the limitations of shared DNA. For him, the physical level, the blood relationship, was merely a metaphor for the real, which was the bond of the Spirit. For him, the flesh was not important. The Spirit was everything. When told that his mother and brothers were looking for him, he pointed out to his friends and followers and said, "Who is my mother? Who are my brothers? These are my mother and my sisters and my brothers." Again and again, Jesus scandalized the self-righteous people of his day, whose limited, narrow minds were stuck on the carnal level, and who simply could not grasp the whole new level that was opening up before them. They had a very narrow notion of what family was, a notion laid down by traditions and dictated by statistics. Jesus recognized none of these limitations. His family embraced all sorts of unconventional people, and the ties between them were not of blood, but of love, not of flesh, but of spirit. There are many types of family, and almost every one of us can say that we do not come from an entirely conventional one. If we look closely enough, which perhaps we would rather not do, we will find that some of the lines on our family tree were written by a very shaky hand indeed. We hear so much today about dysfunctional families. What is the definition of a functional family? Have you ever seen one? The American novelist Neal Shusterman writes something interesting about this, saying, "I always hear people talk about dysfunctional families. It annoys me because it makes you think that somewhere there's this magical family where everyone gets along and no one ever screams things they don't mean, and there's never a time when sharp objects should be hidden. Well, I'm sorry, but that family doesn't exist. And if you find some neighbors that seem to be the grinning model of function, Trust me, that's the family that will get arrested for smuggling arms in their SUV between soccer games. The best you can really hope for is a family where everyone's problems, big and small, work together, kind of like an orchestra, where every instrument is out of tune in exactly the same way, so you don't really notice. Interesting, and perhaps consoling to most of us. So don't worry if your own family seems at times to fit into the category of dysfunctional. All families do in one way or another, because every family is composed of human beings. Weak, imperfect, emotional, and at times irrational. As the American poet Mary Karr put it in her memoir, a dysfunctional family is any family with more than one person in it. Be proud of your family tree. At least don't be ashamed of it. Don't worry that Noah was not carrying your family papers onto the ark. Don't be shocked when not all the lines and branches on that tree are straight. Don't try to hide those that are squiggly or vague or questionable, those that do not lead to where they are supposed to. I guarantee you that that phrase, supposed to, was invented by someone whose family tree is far more full of surprises than yours is. What is family? Is it really limited to those mysterious names hanging on a family tree? Is it determined by bloodlines and shared DNA? How limiting is this material, carnal, physical notion? As usual, the modern voice of prophecy is most eloquently stated in an old Peanuts cartoon, which through the mouths of children proclaims, brothers and sisters should never be in the same family. What is family? It does not matter what DNA you have, which ancestors you share, what blood runs through your veins. It does not matter whether you gave birth to that person who looks up to you because you have always been there for her. Family ties are not formed by flesh, nor by accident of birth. There are many relatives who will never be family. And there are many more persons who have fallen from trees far different from our own, to whom we are inextricably connected. Family is not something we are born into. It is something we become. The sap which runs through our family tree and connects us all together is not blood. It is something far more powerful, far more binding. It is love. That is family. That is holy family. So let us lift up our eyes, open our hearts, and climb the family tree.